well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with us on the program today. We're going to be spending some time with my friend Ryan Petty here in just a couple of minutes. You know, Ryan, not only a contributor to Bearing Arms, a Second Amendment advocate, a school safety activist, but also a member of the Florida Board of Education. And, you know, yesterday being the anniversary of the shootings at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, we spoke about the column by Tom Rogers at Newsweek. The only way to stop these things is to ban and confiscate AR-15s. Well, the last time that Ryan was on the show, he talked about how dozens of plotted attacks on schools in Florida have been stopped over the past few years, not by confiscating commonly owned firearms, but again, by ensuring that there are proper safeguards at school. And there are also tools available to get individuals both the help that they need and resources within the criminal justice system, if need be, to stop these attacks before they're carried out. Now, Florida is actually expanding on these efforts. As part of the permitless carry legislation that was passed earlier this year, there is a strong school safety component. We're going to be getting into the details of that piece of the permitless carry bill with Ryan here in just a moment. Before we do, however, you know, when you make choices about where to put your hard-earned dollars, you're supporting not only the company that made the product, but the values and the principles of that organization, right? It's easier to flip a switch against a company when they blatantly conflict with their values. I mean, we all have seen what's going on with Bud Light and now Target. But do you make an effort to do business with the companies that support what you believe when you can? Well, do yourself a favor and give my friends at Defender Ammunition a shot. These guys are veteran-owned and operated. Every person on their staff is military-connected. They are huge supporters of our military community, backing causes that are actually making a difference in the lives of those who've served. In fact, the profits from all of their logoed gear goes directly to the charities that they back. I am proud to support this company. Their ammo's top-notch. Their customer service is incredible. One of their shipping department actually writes handwritten thank you notes to their customers. Give Defender Ammunition a try. They've thrown us a promo code to use through the end of this month, so you've got just a few days left here. That code is Bearing Arms. Yep, just like it sounds, BEARING, ARMS, and it is good for 5% off of your order. Trust me, once you give these guys a try, you won't be going anywhere else. Check them out at defenderammunition.com. So let's start our conversation with Ryan Petty, because I'm very curious to know what is taking place in Florida that has stopped dozens, and that's Ryan's word, not mine, dozens of planned attacks on schools in the state without, again, trying to ban and confiscate our way to safety. Because what Florida's doing seems to be paying off. And unlike what Tom Rogers asserts, no need for a gun ban to do it. Take a look and a listen. Ryan, thanks so much for coming back on the show, man. It's good to see you again.
It's great to see you, Cam. Thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be here.
Well, listen, I mean, with yesterday being the anniversary of the shootings in Uvalde, you know, we have seen no shortage of people saying that the only way to stop these types of attacks is through gun control, right? We got to ban AR-15s. We got to raise the age to purchase. And, you know, you and I have talked before on camera about some of the things that Florida has done over the past few years since Parkland to prevent these types of attacks. But as you and I were talking off air earlier this week, you know, you said there are some major components to the permitless carry bill that actually are all about school safety. And those really haven't gotten nearly as much attention as much as the permitless carry portion of this legislation. So I wanted to talk about what else Florida is doing here to keep kids safe at school without trying to make Floridians defenseless and unable to protect themselves at home and in public.
Yeah, you know, I'm really proud of what we've done here in Florida. Now, again, there have been some things that you and I have discussed on, previous shows where, you know, we've talked about the Florida's red flag law. We've talked about the age to purchase a long gun was raised here in Florida, and that's been tied up in court, and we'll see where that ultimately ends up. But on a positive note, most of what we did, probably 95% of what we did to protect schools after Parkland, had nothing to do with infringing on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens, law-abiding gun owners. And so One of those things that we did that has proven incredibly helpful is we knew that most of these school attacks, and for that matter, these attacks that happen in our, in shopping malls and in our communities, and um, there's this principle called leakage, right, where these attackers share their plans for attack or the threat that they want to make against a school or public place. They share that with somebody, and when we know that they're planning an attack, we can prevent that, and we do that through a process called behavioral threat assessment and management, and that's the process we've been using in Florida. We take threats very seriously. If you make a threat against a school in Florida, you're going to receive a visit from law enforcement, and you'll likely be charged. And we take it very seriously. So those tips come in, law enforcement investigates those, and that's called behavioral threat assessment and management. It's the way that the Secret Service protects the president. What we've done here in Florida just recently, and yesterday I had the privilege of sitting in and voting for rule changes at the Florida Department of Education, which will impact our schools across the state of Florida. 2.8 million students will now benefit from the changes we're making to our behavioral threat assessment and management process here in Florida to better align with the way the Secret Service operates, and to better align to give us the scalability we need here in Florida to be able to train our own trainers and get this process implemented better than we have been doing across the state of Florida. Without a doubt, we have prevented school attacks. Would they have been at the level of Parkland? We don't know, because they were prevented, and that's the good thing. We're catching these threats early. We're intervening before they can happen, and we're keeping kids and teachers and staff members safe at Florida schools. So I'm really excited about what we're implementing here.
Is Florida unique in doing this at the state level, in terms of putting these, behavioral threat assessment teams and trainers in place in these schools?
No, there are other states that are doing this. Texas is doing it. I believe, Indiana has that program. Virginia has a program. There's several states doing it. I think we're doing it better or more cohesively, if I can brag a little bit about Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We've taken this really seriously, and one of the challenges in implementing something like behavioral threat management is you've got groups that say, hey, look, this is going to, we don't want more law enforcement in our schools because this is going to take vulnerable kids and put them on this so-called school to prison pipeline, which has absolutely been disproven. And it frustrates me that we are even arguing about this anymore. But the fact that we're getting our educational institutions cooperating across disciplines. So we've got mental health specialists, in schools that can help. We have our school administrators are trained on this. Law enforcement's trained on this. In fact, we even have some of our law enforcement agencies using behavioral threat management model to as another tool that doesn't require infringements on our civil rights, to make sure that somebody that's a threat to themselves or others can get the treatment and help that they need. That's ultimately the way we solve these problems. It's not infringing on the rights of law-abiding gun owners. So I think we're doing it better. And with the changes we made yesterday, and this new bill that was passed by the legislature earlier this year and signed by the governor, I think we're going to take it yet to the next level.
So what do you say to people who say, well, Ryan, I mean, okay, fine, this isn't the school to prison pipeline, but this is like Minority Report, pre-crime stuff, right? I'm concerned about surveillance. I'm concerned about my kid getting labeled as a threat when they're really not. Are there safeguards in place to ensure that we're not just simply, mass surveilling 2.8 million students looking for anything that might possibly be construed as a threat?
Yeah, no, 100% understand the concern. And, this is where because because we're trying to intervene early, we don't necessarily want it to get to that threat level. We want to fight. Look, let's say there's a student that's struggling. Maybe there's something going, maybe they're being bullied, or there's something else going on in their lives, or there's something else happening at home that's causing an issue. If we can identify that early, we've got a lot of options at that point to bring in services or engage with their parents. Likely is really what we want to do: engage with their parents and get that student the help that they need before they choose violence as an option, right? So the whole goal of this is to try to get somebody that might go down the pathway to violence off of that pathway. And there's lots of other benefits in doing this. So we can help solve bullying in schools with this, and we can also, our teachers are so frustrated because there's such a lack of discipline in our schools at this point. What we've done here in Florida has made it very clear that we are going to make sure that our teachers are able to teach and our classrooms are safe and students feel safe in those classrooms. And so that's the only way learning can actually happen. If kids don't feel safe, they're not going to be able to teach. And quite frankly, if teachers don't feel safe in the classroom, and we learned, right after Parkland, over 50% of the teachers in the county of Broward County, where Parkland is, didn't feel safe. And that was a union. That was a union survey where they went out to their members and said, do you feel safe? And 59% of teachers didn't feel safe in their classroom. Well, how can learning happen in that environment? So our goal is to get this long before it becomes a threat, long before it becomes an issue of juvenile justice or criminal justice. And quite frankly, my response to these school to prison pipeline folks is, when there are no consequences for criminal activity in our schools, and quite frankly, there's a lot of criminal activity going on in our schools. When there are no consequences, the juveniles learn that there are no consequences. And then as adults, because they haven't learned that there are consequences, they commit crimes. And that is, in fact, the school to prison pipeline, in my mind, not teaching our youth that there are consequences for bad behavior and that we have to address it and deal with it. So with all of that said, get these kids off of that pathway to violence early through intervention programs and treating the cause of why they feel the need to seek violence as a solution. But let me be clear. As our good friend President Obama used to say, let me be clear: if you make a threat against a school in Florida, it will be taken seriously, and there will be consequences.
Just one question here, because we've been talking a lot about these targeted attacks on schools. Is this also something that's being used to, when there's not necessarily a threat of external violence, but maybe the possibility of self-harm? Is that also a part of this threat assessment?
It is, and the great thing about this is that it can be applied, unlike gun control, which does not solve the problems that the gun control advocates like to make, because they like to lump everything together, right? They like to lump suicide and gang violence and these random targeted attacks like a school shooting. They like to lump all those things together and try to find to them the common solution is gun control.
Right.
It's nothing could be further from the truth. These problems all have different sources, and so you have to treat them differently. But early identification and intervention is the common thread. That's where we can identify, hey, there's something going wrong in your life. Let's deal with what that issue is and get those folks services. What I hope we can do, and again, you and I have talked a lot about, for example, red flag laws, right? And I have due process concerns about red flag laws, and they're growing concerns. And let me just say that I've got growing concerns about this. But even in the best case, most states don't deal with the underlying causes of why the law enforcement officers are out there, why the criminal justice system is now involved in confiscating firearms. They're not dealing with the underlying problem. And with behavioral threat management, this model that we're using in Florida, the underlying issues get addressed. And I hope that we can get to a point where we don't need to red flag, right? Because we're dealing with the underlying issues. And quite frankly, when we do that, we don't need to confiscate your firearms. We don't need to violate due process in doing any of that. We can work with the person, understand what's going wrong in their life, and get them the help they need. And law enforcement in Florida is being trained on this. They call it crisis intervention, and so we bring crisis intervention trained law enforcement to these to these incidents, and then we get them the help they need. And it's a game changer for everyone, but it's really a different way of doing law enforcement, and it's going to take time. It's a culture shift for law enforcement.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it seems to be paying, real dividends here. And like you say, contrary to those who say, well, this just promotes a school to prison pipeline, it seems like it actually does the opposite. Seems like, again, rather than saying, all right, well, the response always has to be the criminal justice system, but we always have to wait until the crime has been committed. We can only deal with these individuals after the fact. That, again, this is an opportunity to intervene and to get, these troubled kids the help that they need. In some cases, again, that might be in the criminal justice system, but ideally that's not the case. I'm curious. One last question for you, Ryan, because, we're talking about these kids who have exhibited signs, right? Or maybe, again, they've talked about their plans to carry out an attack. I've been thinking a lot about just the general stress that kids are feeling these days. And it is, clear. I mean, youth suicide rates have, increased over the past few years. Youth overdose rates have increased over the past few years. I don't know the answer to this, but I'm just curious to get your take on, do you think we need to be doing more, just generally speaking, with our kids? And maybe it doesn't come from government. Maybe it's parents, maybe it's churches, but maybe it's a combination of the two. But teaching our kids how to be more resilient to the stressors that inevitably will happen in our lives. Is that something that you think might be of benefit going forward?
100%. And, our first lady, Casey DeSantis, has put together a resiliency program. In fact, she uses that term, and it is being implemented in Florida schools as we speak. And what it does is we use the same techniques basically for these behavioral threat management model. We identify kids that are having these challenges, and we bring in community leaders and parents, right? One of the concerns a lot of parents have is how much, I don't want a mental health counselor talking with my child without my permission or without my knowledge, right? So we make sure we involve the parents in all of this. And that's, I think, another unique feature of what we're doing here in Florida. But this resiliency initiative, it's designed to teach these kids, look, life is full of challenges. Life is not going to be easy. There will be things you have to overcome. And here's a toolkit for how to do that. And here's some resources that can help you. And here are mentors that can help guide you through some of these challenges. And here are parents that are willing to volunteer their time and experience to come in and help in these situations. And so we're trying to address it that way. I'm excited to see what we do, but so much of what we ask government to do at this point is really a challenge, Cam. And we've got the breakdown of society and societal values and norms, and we've got we've been experiencing the destruction of the family over the last several generations. These are things that people now want government to solve, right? And government can solve. And I'm fundamentally skeptical that government can solve some of these things. But I am pleased to see an initiative like Ms. DeSantis has put together here in Florida, where we are acknowledging that there are issues, but we're bringing community resources in, and we're not just loading our schools with yet one more thing to try to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I listen, I agree with you. I think that, as a conservative, I've never really believed that government is the answer to our problems. There are certain services that, we do expect government to do, but to be our nanny is not one of them. And so, I'm glad to hear you say that. But at the same time, there are going to be those kids who fall through the cracks, right? The kids who don't have that stable family environment, the kids who aren't learning these things. And so having those resources, I think, really is an important tool. It doesn't absolve us as parents, doesn't absolve us even as just members of a community to do what we can to help pass these lessons of resilience on. But again, I'm really glad to hear about that. I had no idea that Casey DeSantis was doing this, but it's been weighing on my mind a lot. So I'm really glad to hear that that project is underway, and hopefully, again, it will pay benefits. Ryan, listen, man, I always enjoy spending some time with you. I cannot thank you enough for all of your activism and your advocacy, as well as your contributions to bearingarms.com, by the way. So thank you again for everything. And I look forward to continuing this conversation very soon, man.
Well, thank you, Cam. It's always a pleasure to be here. And look, we have to defend our rights. But there are things that we can do to help those that are struggling or wanting to commit violent acts. There are things that we can do that don't require us to infringe on the rights of law-abiding gun owners. And I'm going to keep looking for those solutions and doing my part to try to get those implemented.
Well, listen, man, we really appreciate everything you do, and I'm looking forward to talking again very soon. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate Ryan joining us on the program, and I am looking forward to continuing the conversation with him in the very near future. Before we get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, I know you guys have definitely noticed the U.S. dollar continues to buy less, right? Last year, the average IRA and 401k balance fell by more than 20%. If we've learned anything from the past few years, it's that anything can and will happen. Well, here's something that may help: a gold IRA. Gold may be a great option for you. That's right, physical gold in your IRA. Many central banks are buying tons right now. So what does that tell you? Augusta Precious Metals is a gold IRA company that offers its customers the opportunity to invest in gold. You can call Augusta Precious Metals and learn how a gold IRA can help you. If you've saved $100,000 or more for retirement, call Augusta Precious Metals and get their free ultimate guide to gold IRAs. Tell them you heard it on our show, and they'll give you a free gold coin when you open up a gold IRA. Contact Augusta Precious Metals and diversify your retirement today. Call 855-222-4997. That's 855-222-4997. Again, Augusta Precious Metals at 855-222-4997. All right, so today's deal of the day, I got to tell you, the recidivist report, this is such an unbelievable story out of Washington, D.C. Kudos to Nathan Bach of WUSA in D.C. for actually uncovering the details here behind this woman, Nikita Marie Walker, who is now accused of murder after a drunk driving crash in March of this year. She apparently was on probation for DUI at the time of this crash, a DUI that she received in 2020. But as Baca found out, that 2020 DUI was not her first run-in with the law. She also had DUIs in 2018 and in 2015. And in every one of those cases, she was placed on probation. First offense, second offense, third offense, 12 months probation in lieu of incarceration. Every single time. What makes matters even worse is that Walker in 2015 was found guilty of attacking 3 different women with a knife. One woman sustained a severe cut, apparently to her hand, another to her face, another woman to her forehead. She was found guilty in June of 2015 and sentenced to 18 months probation in that case. Yeah. So violent crime, get probation. DUI, get probation. Get probation while you're on probation for a violent crime, get probation. I mean, this is absolutely unbelievable. Muriel Bowser, the D.C. mayor, spoke to WUSA about this and said, well, listen, whatever gaps there are, we'll fill them. I think this sounds like a technology solution and a fix that could potentially make us safer on the roads. Listen, I think the solution is staring the mayor right in the face. You need a functional criminal justice system. In Washington, D.C., the vast majority of, small cases like DUI, this is the result. I'm not sure what it takes actually to put an offender behind bars in Washington, D.C. these days, other than perhaps being, an outspoken conservative. But in this case, again, a repeat offender, time and time again, caught behind the wheel of the car, too inebriated to drive, and the consequences, well, there were no consequences. And now Walker again, facing murder charges for this most recent accident in March of this year in which 3 people were killed on Rock Creek Parkway. And while, according to authorities, she was the one behind the wheel, and that would mean that she ultimately bears the culpability for that crash. If prosecutors are right, she's responsible. I would say she was aided and abetted by the criminal justice system in Washington, D.C. and their catch and release policies when it comes to repeat offenders like this. Now, today's armed citizen story from Marietta, Georgia, where a 28-year-old was shot and killed and one of his alleged compatriots wounded in an attempted home invasion. 28-year-old Anthony Jones, along with 2 other people, tried to break into a home in Woodstock, Georgia. 2 of the homeowners there, 2 of the residents inside the home, fired at the 3 men in self-defense. Jones was hit in the torso multiple times. Police responded to the scene just after 8:30 p.m. on May the 20th. They found Jones deceased at that point. 20-year-old Darius Butler, another one of the robbers there, also suffered injuries during the exchange. He's now been charged with armed robbery, aggravated assault, and murder. The residents of the home not facing any charges, and looks like it's going to stay that way. Looks like a pretty clear-cut case of self-defense. But we'll keep our eyes open for any more details as they become available. Finally today, our good deed of the day from Lewis County, Tennessee, where a trustee at the county workhouse was in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. He was at a waste transfer station helping residents unload trash from their cars. And this elderly woman gets out with her trash in hand and falls down. Now, anytime an elderly person falls down, I mean, that can be pretty serious in and of itself. But to make matters worse here, the vehicle that she was in, I guess maybe she thought she put it in park as she was getting out, but it got stuck in reverse. So when she fell out of the car starts rolling backwards. She's about to get run over. She's screaming for help. And Brett King jumps into the moving vehicle, slams on the brakes, puts the car in park, and stops the car before the front tire can run over the poor lady. The mayor of Lewis County, Jonah Keltner, said Brett's heroic actions and quick response helped guarantee the health and safety of the elderly woman who survived the accident and walked away with no significant injuries. So again, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Brett King there in Lewis County, Tennessee, we thank you, sir, for your very, very good deed. Now, that is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Just a programming note, we will be off for the Memorial Day holiday, so we'll do a Tuesday through Friday schedule next week. You're not going to miss any Cam & Companies. And we will be updating BearingArms.com throughout the holiday weekend as well, so I would encourage you to check out the website. Keep up to date on all of the latest Second Amendment news and information all across the nation. And, of course, on Memorial Day weekend, I hope that you take some time to honor those who have lost their life in defense of this great nation of ours. Look forward to talking with you again next Tuesday. We'll see you on the website between now and then. And thank you, as always, for being a part of Bearing Arms. You know, if you want to become a VIP member, we make it really easy to do so. All you got to do, go to bearingarms.com/subscribe, use the promo code GUNRIGHTS, and you can get a significant savings on your VIP membership. In exchange, we're going to give you, and as a way of saying thanks, we're going to give you exclusive content, news stories, analysis you won't find anywhere else, because your support does matter, and it really does make a difference. So thank you again. We'll see you back here soon. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.